Fantastic, thanks. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining. My name is Megan Hughes, Digital Construction Manager here at XD House. I wanted to say first and foremost, what a fantastic first half. I think that we've heard a lot of different perspectives across the supply chain, from everyone from client to contractor, or the whole of the supply chain. We're coming at it from a slightly different angle, as opposed to looking for how the industry is sort of putting data governance excellence on us. We're trying to drive change from the bottom up. So we're really trying to drive excellence up the supply chain here. So we're going to go through a quick whistle-stop tour of who we are, the need for data governance. We're going to give you some real-life case studies from our experience, particularly either on-site or working with consultants and contractors. Then we're going to go through a live demo of Mortar, actually, and how we've aligned the data governance principles to the platform and how we've delivered based on that. Fantastic. So I'll get straight into it. So again, I work for XD House. We're a creative digital construction firm, and we're on a mission to streamline and enhance the built environment globally. So we dabble in design and workflow automation. We create our own customized plugins in order to facilitate better information management. Again, platform interoperability is something that we're really is in the heart of what we do, and real-time data reporting as well. We're based in 2 locations currently. We've got London and Dubai, and we've delivered some fantastic projects worldwide with really good information management principles. That's been recognised through Digital Construction Innovator of the Year, and something that's very relevant to this is last year we secured the ISO 19650 certification in both information management and also information security as well, which was something that a lot of our clients were asking for as we were working in quite protected regions. And we did that using Mortar. We turned up to our audit with our auditor expecting us to give him a load of Excel spreadsheets and Word files, and we turned up with this relational database system called Mortar, which he was a little bit baffled with, but what a fantastic tool that we were able to demonstrate the use of good information management. We began our journey within January at the beginning of last year, and the journey from there has sort of taken off. Again, this isn't a sales pitch for Mortar, but this is how we've managed to achieve really good data governance. So who are XD House and where do we sit within the supply chain? Why am I talking about supply chain excellence? We are classed as an appointed party, so we deal with anything from tender response all the way up to model delivery. If you are aware of the OPERAM certification, you must have seen this. We get involved in areas from clauses from 3 to 7. Again, here it is as per the ISO 19650 standards. We're down here and refer to ourselves internally as the purple team. We get involved in tender response, but mainly through production. So we are actually producing BIM models, shop drawings, etc., all within the ISO 19650 guidelines. Data and information exchange is such a massive thing, and we've heard from the majority of the supply chain here being SMEs, and as per the UK business what am I trying to say? The Commons Library research briefing, around 99%, especially of the construction industry in the UK, are considered SMEs. So we make up such a huge proportion of the construction industry. And I feel like the further down the chain you go, the more innovative softwares that people are trying to use, maybe for financial reasons, but also people are coming up with all these fantastical software and platform solutions, whereas the further up you go, the more sort of stringent it seems to be. So just a little bit on data governance here and what it means to us, not only as an appointed party, but also as a really keen supply chain member interested in information management. For us, it's things like accountability, quality, compliance, transparency, and data security and access. I'm going to focus on these throughout the demo that I'll be given with Mortar. But I really want to focus on just a couple of case studies and stories and why we're so passionate about this stuff. I've come from a contractor background with a really heavy reliance on BIM and a really keen interest for very good information management. But within the experience, and again, 99% of this construction industry is SMEs, and we're all trying to talk to each other. But we're also trying to compete for the best projects. This is one of our first case studies we came across. We had a client who was considered an appointing party. They had a huge asset portfolio of retail stores all over the world. They couldn't access their construction data when it came to remodeling. They had fantastic plans to expand and renovate their retail stores. But when they came to finding the information, that was locked up. And it was locked up in the contractor's own portfolio or their own platform. It was also, a lot of it was still with the consultants. So what that meant was the consultants and the contractors held a lot of information power over that appointed party. So there's a really big problem here in that they didn't actually own or control any of their data that rightly belonged to them. So they sort of came to us with this problem and this panic, and we were able to kind of really dive deep into what was the source of the problem here. And it was data governance. So what we were able to do was define a clear data ownership policy, and that obviously came with internal and external policies and contracts as well, ensuring that those data sets and those BIM deliverables, if you want to call it, were actually successfully communicated and actually handed over at the end of the project. A basic CDE shared platform was then also implemented, which looked at things like version, accessibility, and assigning the correct roles and permissions, and assigning people to actually go in and manage that thing at the end was very crucial, and it needed and it required a cultural change as well. Based on the accessibility they were given, they were actually able to come up with their own dashboard, which was fantastic, where they could start looking at things like, which next 10 stores are we going to remodel, etc. This second case study was a very, very interesting one. We started to work in regions whereby they did not allow platforms to be used, whereby the data was not hosted locally. So they came to us. We were trying to work on projects with these clients, and they said, in accordance to our policy, we do not utilize project software data whereby the data isn't hosted locally within that region. And at first we saw that as a problem, as you would. Well, why can't I use XYZ platform? Why can I use it on this project in this region? Why can't I use it in region B? And it was to do with the data residency restriction. So they obviously had regional regulations there, which you had to not only accept, but respect. But it wasn't just us working with foreign hosted platforms. We were an appointed party, so we were part of a much bigger supply chain. And again, the further down the supply chain you go, the more data exchanges are there. We, for example, could be working on behalf of an interior design or a fit out. We've got to work with M&E, architectural, structural, etc. We've got to work with all these different suppliers and consultants that all have their own platforms that they like to use. Well, now they have to use ones that are mandated by the client. So what we were finding is there's a lot of collaboration issues. You've got siloed systems, which are causing things like delays, miscommunication, and ultimately reducing trust, which is not very good if you're trying to get in with a new client. So what we were trying to do in sharing and reporting our data, and especially our progress. You know, we're part of a much bigger supply chain. We were looking at centralized data integration as well. Okay, if I've got data that I'm trying to report progress on, and I'm using Autodesk, I'm using Revisto for clashes, I'm using SharePoint in some cases as well, and maybe some of those platforms, amongst many others, maybe some of those aren't allowed to be used because, again, the data isn't hosted locally within the particular region of the project. So the way that we managed to do this was to draw in and sync all that data, all that information into Mortar. So then we had control over all of the data that was coming in, and we were then able to export what is essentially a copy of that into to send to the client. So it's a report. We're not actually sending the raw data, which again, we have the accountability, we have the quality and the control. And we were able to, again, create the reports and not send the raw data, but just, again, a copy. So we called it client ready exports. And then that obviously allowed us to secure regional compliance. And that just goes again. So some of the data was hosted around the world, as you can see. Right, it's live demo time. So I'm going to focus on two main areas here. The first one is I'm going to give a quick whistle-stop tour on how we aligned with the ISO 19650 standards in order to secure the BSI kite mark for, again, ISO 19650. And then I'm going to go quickly through the centralized data integration, which takes us back to what we were talking about earlier to gain that centralized data integration and the compliance. So I'm going to look at three things here. I'm going to look at tender response and how we sync data when we first get a project. The second is TIDP tracking, syncing from another data source. And then thirdly is clash detection, which is syncing from a third, just to give you an idea. Let me just move this over. Here we go. Fantastic. Yeah, so the first thing that we were focusing on is the ISO 19650 compliance. And we had two options here. We either go down the traditional route of, you know, the siloed Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, etc., etc. We were really trying to do it in a way that was a bit more synced, a bit more linked, and a bit more interoperable. So the first one we had here was the 5.3 tender response, whereby for each clause that we were involved in, again, we are the appointed party, so we will get involved from 5.3 usually to 5.7. So for each clause here, we had some dedicated workflows on how exactly we were going to undertake this, and this was made available to each of our internal team. So for every each start of the project, we have here what exactly we need to do in order to secure ISO 19650 compliance. It goes through to appointment, mobilization, collaborative production information, etc., etc. We mainly get involved in the actual production of the information. We did a similar thing here for ISO 19650 ISO 19650 Part 5, which again almost seemed like an add-on to the process and to the certification process, but nevertheless we had to comply, or at least show a readiness of compliance. So we did things like the sensitivity assessment. All this was done in Mortar. We've got the security managed approach, a strategy management plan, and things like security breach and incident management plan. They're all there. We've created a template here within Mortar to fill out if and when it's required. So I'm going to dive deep into a little bit more of the ISO 19650 Part 2. As I mentioned, we're going to focus on three areas here. The first one is the tender response. So as an appointed party, obviously we're bidding for jobs like any other. And how do we deal with information coming in from different sources? Now, information, when it comes in, we have clients that still send things via email, and there'll be, a load of PDFs connected to an email. It's not ideal, but it's the way that the industry is moving, and we're all working to improve. So things like that will then get saved to something like a SharePoint, and we're able to sync it in from Mortar. So this is an example of one of our projects here. We've got our invitation to tender documents, and we're actually bringing in that sync data from SharePoint, and then we're able to track and manage that. But it's also very good as a record. You get the tender documents received, and then if anything else changes within your appointment or mobilization stage, you've got a record there of what you have received when you were first asked to price the job. So again, you're syncing in there from another data source, which is SharePoint. And then following that, you're able to review the information. And in terms of your capability and capacity to undertake the information management function, we're able to do that pretty much automatically, and then actually export that into something that's legible for the client, like a PDF or Word. So we have here our capability and capacity assessment. So we've got here our softwares, the different software that we use every day in XD House, whether that be things like Revisto, Revit, Navisworks, you name it. And then which team members are able to effectively use that. Similarly, for the management, the capability and the capacity to manage and produce the information as well. So we might have a team member that's absolutely fantastic at managing it, but in terms of producing that information, whether again that be 3D or 2D information, we assign a 1 to 5 level for it. And again, whether they're actually available at that time to manage and produce the information. Do they have the correct license, and have they been selected to be part of that project? So the client has a clear list of who is going to be working on their project once they receive the tender response. Similarly, we also have the training plans, and we've been through many different trainings from XD House. The first one being the Operam. So we have a list of all the chapters that have been completed by the team and who is an information management practitioner. They click yes or no, and obviously that supports our case to undertake the information management function. Something that we are working on as well, just within this week actually, is the Revisto expert level, and based on your role within the company, we are assigning different levels of training. So again, that will go as part of our tender response. So you've got a almost plug and play workflow here, where the client will receive that tender response and they'll go, okay, this is a record of what we've sent them. And then we've also got X, Y, and Z in terms of information management, who is capable, who has the capacity, and who has the knowledge and training to actually undertake that function. So in the case that, fantastic, we actually get the project, I'm just going to now look at the tracking and managing of the information. As we go through the appointment stage, we obviously will then send the TIDP, etc. When it comes to tracking and managing, again, we work within the ACC Autodesk as part of our CDE, our common data environment. And this is a point whereby the BIM, Digital Construction Manager, whatever you want to call it, they are actually tracking and managing the information that comes in and what's being generated. So we'll have our planned versus our actual submission date, and we'll have that for drawings and models as well, if that's the work that we're undertaking. So you can see here the information that was planned and when it was actually sent, and that is all saved again within Mortar and brought from the different data sources, which tends to be ACC. As we're going through again our workflow from tender response to production of information and model delivery, we as an appointed party will obviously have to coordinate with different disciplines. So that requires a lot of clash detection. And something that we also do is we bring in things like Revisto issues here, as you can see on screen, and any issues that we sort of get, that will all be automatically synced within Revisto. So when it comes to producing the weekly report, as we do, we've got our TIDP tracking, exactly what we said we were going to produce and the date we said we were going to do it versus the actual submission, and hopefully they align, or even better, they're produced earlier. Then we've also got a record of Revisto clashes, and this again demonstrates very good compliance. We're not generating anything really through Mortar in terms of the data that we're producing, the BIM data that we're producing, but what we are doing is we're drawing it in from different sources, again, to demonstrate to the client. And if they do not allow any data to be produced from certain platforms, well, then we just sync it into Mortar, and then we export it as a PDF or a Word or something, just to show information management progress and compliance, really. Fantastic. I think that was everything I wanted to cover within this session. Yeah, this again just shows the sync within ACC, again, just to demonstrate our compliance. So I wanted to thank you guys very much for listening to me today, and yeah, I wish everyone else the best of luck in their sessions. Cheers.